Imagine a city so wealthy that its very walls were said to glow like the heavens. A place where the streets were paved with the ambitions of kings and the sky was pierced by a tower that dared to challenge the gods themselves. This was Babylon, the jewel of Mesopotamia, the richest, most decadent, and most powerful city to ever grace the face of the earth. But there is a dark paradox buried beneath the burning sands of modern-day Iraq. A secret that challenges everything we think we know about the dawn of civilization. How is it possible for a city to become a legend and turn into ruins before it was even founded? To understand the truth, we must peel back the layers of dust and blood. We must look past the golden gates and into the eyes of the men who built it, destroyed it, and then tried to resurrect its ghost. We are told stories of the Hanging Gardens, a wonder of the world so beautiful it seemed to defy gravity. We hear of Hammurabi, the man who brought law to a lawless world. But the ruins you see today, the ones photographed by explorers and studied by scholars, are not what they seem. They are a magnificent lie. A golden mask covering a scar that history tried to heal, but could never quite hide. Centuries before the Babylon we know reached its peak, there was another Babylon. A city so hated by its enemies that they didn't just want to conquer it. They wanted to erase it from the memory of the universe. Imagine a king so consumed by rage that he ordered his soldiers to smash the statues of the gods. He didn't just burn the houses. He dug into the foundations until not one stone rested upon another. And then he did the unthinkable. He diverted the path of a mighty river to flood the scorched remains, turning the gate of God into a silent, underwater grave. The world thought Babylon was gone forever. They thought the name would be swallowed by the mud and the reeds. But they underestimated the power of a legend. How did a city that was completely erased rise from the depths to become the most famous metropolis in human history? Why did the greatest builders of antiquity obsess over a place that had been cursed by the blood of its own citizens? Today we journey back 4,000 years. We will walk through the cobalt blue gates of Ishtar and stand in the shadow of the real Tower of Babel. We will uncover the chilling laws that governed the lives of millions, where an eye was traded for an eye and a life for a life. And we will finally solve the mystery of the city that lived twice. Everything you think you know about the richest city in history is about to change. Welcome to the forbidden truth of Babylon. To understand the true weight of Babylon, we must travel back to a time when the world was young and the rules of humanity were still being written in the mud. Between the pulsing veins of the Tigris and the Euphrates, a miracle was born out of the sun-scorched dust of Mesopotamia. This was the Fertile Crescent, a strip of land where life fought a constant war against the desert. But here, the mud was not just dirt. It was the gold of the ancient world, the foundation upon which the first true empire would be carved. Babylon did not begin as a city of marble and gold, but as a small, humble port on the banks of the river. It was a place where merchants traded grain for timber, and where the first dreams of a global center began to take root in the minds of ambitious men. But as the centuries passed, the humble port transformed into a pulsating heart of commerce. It became a magnet for every traveler, every dreamer, and every conqueror from the Mediterranean to the mountains of Persia. The air in Babylon smelled of exotic spices, expensive oils, and the heavy scent of burning incense from 1,000 altars. It was a city that never slept, a labyrinth of brick and bronze where the wealth of nations flowed like the water of the great river. At the center of this rising storm stood a man whose name would become synonymous with justice and iron-fisted rule, Hammurabi. He looked upon a world of chaos and decided that a city of such immense wealth needed a backbone of steel. He did something that had never been done on such a scale before. He wrote the destiny of his people into pillars of black stone. These were the laws that turned a collection of houses into a civilization, ensuring that the strong could not simply devour the weak. Under his gaze, Babylon became the world's first true metropolis, a place where order met opulence. But wealth on this scale acts as a beacon, drawing in the darkness from the edges of the known world. The city's riches were legendary, whispered about in the courts of distant kings who could only dream of such splendor. It is said that the gold within the temple of Marduk alone was enough to buy entire kingdoms, shimmering with a light that blinded those who dared to look upon it. But the story we are told in the history books often skips over the most terrifying chapter of this city's existence. Before the Babylon of the Hanging Gardens, before the blue tiles of the Ishtar Gate, there was a city that was so powerful it became a target for total annihilation. The great kings of the north, the fierce Assyrians, looked upon Babylon not with admiration, but with a burning, suffocating jealousy. They saw a city that claimed to be the gate of the gods, and they decided that those gates needed to be torn down. In the year 689 BC, the Assyrian king Sennacherib decided that it was not enough to merely defeat Babylon in battle. He wanted to commit a crime against memory itself, to wipe the very concept of the city off the face of the earth. His soldiers did not just loot the treasures. They systematically dismantled the homes of the wealthy and the hovels of the poor. They smashed the sacred statues of the gods, dragging the divine protectors of the city through the dirt like common criminals. Then came the final horrific act of vengeance that turned the richest city in history into a ghost. Sennacherib ordered his engineers to dig deep into the earth, cutting through the foundations that had stood for generations. He diverted the waters of the Arata Canal, forcing the river to swallow the ruins of the city whole. He turned the bustling streets into a swamp of mud and broken dreams, declaring that Babylon would never be found again. For years, the world believed he had succeeded, as the site of the world's most glorious city became a silent, mosquito-infested marsh. The name of Babylon began to fade into the realm of myth, a warning to any who dared to build too high or grow too rich. Yet, there is a strange property to the soil of Mesopotamia, a resilience that defies the cruelty of kings. Even as the river covered the stones, the spirit of the city refused to drown, waiting beneath the surface for the moment of its rebirth. This is the paradox that haunts historians to this day, how a city that was wiped clean from the map managed to rise again, greater and more terrifying than before. The destruction of the first Babylon was supposed to be the end of the story, but it was merely the bloody prologue. To understand the Babylon that remains in our collective memory, we must first confront the tragedy of the Babylon that was lost. We must ask ourselves what kind of power could survive a literal deluge of hate and return to claim the crown of the world. The gold that Sennacherib tried to bury would eventually find its way back into the light, but it would be stained with the blood of those who died in the flood. The city that lived twice was about to enter its most decadent and dangerous era. As the waters eventually receded and the mud began to dry, new shadows began to stir in the desert. The stage was being set for a reconstruction so massive, so ambitious, that it would make the previous version of the city look like a mere village. This was the beginning of the Neo-Babylonian era, the time of Nebuchadnezzar, the man who would turn a graveyard into a wonder of the world. But the ghosts of the old city were still there, whispering from the cracks in the new walls. They whispered of the price of such greatness, and the terrible cost of building a paradise in a land of constant war. They warned that any city built upon the ruins of another carries a curse that no amount of gold can ever truly wash away. As we step closer to the towering walls of the second Babylon, we must remember that every brick was laid over a scar. The richest city in history was not just a place of wealth, it was a monument to the human refusal to stay dead. Out of the sun-baked silence of the marshes, the sound of a million hammers began to echo once more. King Nebuchadnezzar too did not just want to restore Babylon. He wanted to build a fortress of the soul that would never again be erased from the earth. He looked at the mud and saw marble. He looked at the scars of the past and saw a canvas for the most expensive dream ever conceived by a mortal man. Under his command, the city didn't just rise, it exploded into a symphony of cobalt blue and shimmering gold. Imagine standing before the Ishtar Gate, a structure so blue it looked as if a piece of the midnight sky had been pulled down to earth. Thousands of glazed tiles, glowing with the intensity of a dying star, depicting dragons and bulls that seemed to breathe in the flickering torchlight. This was the ultimate psychological weapon. Before a visitor even entered the city, they were forced to realize that they were small, insignificant, and entirely at the mercy of a power that could command the colors of the heavens. But the true wealth of Babylon was not just in its walls, it was in the impossible. Nebuchadnezzar looked at his queen, a woman pining for the green mountains of her childhood, and decided to challenge the very laws of nature. The Hanging Gardens were born from this obsession. A mountain of stone and soil rising in the middle of a flat, burning desert. A forest that floated in the air, fed by hidden machinery that defied the gravity of the ancient world. Historians still argue if they truly existed or if they were a collective fever dream of a world blinded by Babylonian opulence. But the myth itself tells us everything we need to know about the city's spirit. Babylon was a place where enough was a word that didn't exist. To live there was to be surrounded by a luxury so heavy it felt like a burden, a golden cage where every brick was cemented with the sweat of 100 nations. Deep within the city's heart, the Edamananki, the true Tower of Babel, pierced the clouds. It was a ziggurat of terrifying proportions, a stairway to the gods that reminded every citizen that their king walked among the stars while they walked in the dust. The air was thick with the scent of burning cedar and the roar of the crowds in the markets. You could find anything in Babylon: silk from the Far East, spices that cost more than a man's life, and slaves whose tongues had been cut out to ensure the secrets of the palace remained silent. But there is a chilling darkness that accompanies such blinding light. The richer Babylon became, the more paranoid its heartbeat grew. The laws of Hammurabi were still carved in stone, but they had taken on a sharper, more desperate edge. Justice in the richest city was a brutal, mathematical equation. If a house collapsed and killed the owner's son, the builder's son was executed in return. It was a society built on the terrifying balance of a life for a life, a tooth for a tooth. Behind the golden masks and the silk veils, the city was a pressure cooker of ambition and fear. The wealth was a magnet, yes, but it was also a target. Every neighboring kingdom watched from the shadows, their eyes reflecting the glow of Babylon's fires. The people feast while the world outside starved. They drank from golden goblets while the foundations of their empire began to crack under the sheer weight of their own arrogance. We often think of Babylon as a paradise lost, but for the millions who labored in the shadow of the blue gates, it was a beautiful nightmare. A place where you could become a king in a night or a corpse by dawn, all for the price of a single gold coin. The tragedy of Babylon is that it forgot the lesson of its own first destruction. It believed that gold was stronger than steel, and that walls could keep out the inevitable rot of time. As the sun set over the Euphrates, casting long bloody shadows across the hanging gardens, the city looked immortal. But the ghosts of Sennacherib's victims were still there, waiting in the mud, whispering that what the river gives, the river eventually takes back. The stage was set for the final act. The wealth was peak, the pride was absolute, and the fall. The fall would be so spectacular that it would echo through the scriptures of every religion for the next 3,000 years. But before the end came, there was a moment of perfect, terrifying silence. A moment when Babylon sat at the center of the universe, unaware that the very ground it was built on was already starting to shift. The final night of the world's most magnificent city did not begin with the sound of trumpets, but with the clinking of golden chalices. King Belshazzar, the heir to Nebuchadnezzar's pride, threw a banquet so massive it seemed to mock the very idea of mortality. Inside the palace, the air was heavy with the scent of roasted meats and the sweat of 1,000 dancers. The elite of Babylon drank from the sacred gold vessels stolen from the temples of conquered nations, laughing at the rumors of an army gathering in the darkness outside. They believed they were safe behind walls so thick that 2 chariots could race side by side along their tops. They believed the Euphrates River, which flowed directly under the city gates, was a moat that no human force could ever cross. But as the wine flowed and the music reached a fever pitch, the laughter suddenly died in 1,000 throats. A ghostly, disembodied hand appeared in the flickering torchlight, tracing glowing letters into the plaster of the palace wall. The king's knees knocked together in terror as the wise men failed to decipher the celestial script. It was a message from the void: Min tekel, Upharsin. Your kingdom has been weighed in the balance and it has been found wanting. While the Babylonian royalty trembled at the writing on the wall, the Persian king Cyrus was busy performing a miracle of engineering in the mud. He did not try to scale the walls or batter down the bronze gates. Instead, he attacked the very lifeblood of the city. Thousands of Persian soldiers worked in the silence of the desert night to dig a massive trench. They diverted the flow of the mighty Euphrates into a dry basin, watching as the water level that protected the city began to drop inch by agonizing inch. The gate of God was suddenly left vulnerable, not from above but from below. As the riverbed turned into a path of wet silt and drying reeds, the Persian army waded silently into the heart of the capital under the cover of the revelry. By the time the first cry of alarm echoed through the streets, it was already too late. The invincible city, the jewel of the ancient world, was taken without a massive siege, falling into the hands of its enemies while its leaders were still drunk on their own arrogance. Babylon did not burn to the ground that night, but its spirit was severed. The crown of the world was passed to a new empire, and the city that once commanded the sun began its long, slow descent into the shadows of the past. Alexander the Great would later try to restore its glory, dreaming of making Babylon the capital of his own global empire. But the city seemed to carry a heavy, invisible weight. Alexander died within its walls at the age of 32, his dreams of a new Babylon dying with him. Slowly the people began to leave. The grand canals that once fed the hanging gardens became choked with salt and sand. The blue tiles of the Ishtar Gate began to flake and fall, buried by the relentless march of the Mesopotamian dust. The city that lived twice was finally being consumed by the only thing it couldn't bribe or outrun: the silence of the desert. The great temples of Marduk crumbled into shapeless mounds, and the stairway to heaven became a haven for jackals and scorpions. For centuries, the richest city in history was nothing more than a ghost story whispered by nomads. Its treasures were looted, its bricks were stolen to build the houses of commoners, and its very location became a mystery hidden beneath the burning Iraqi sun. Today we look at the ruins and see the ultimate warning of human history. Babylon proves that no matter how high we build our towers or how much gold we hoard within our walls, the river of time eventually dries up for everyone. The forbidden truth is that Babylon never truly died, it simply moved into our blood. Every time we build a metropolis that reaches for the clouds, or create a law that demands an eye for an eye, we are walking in the shadow of the city that refused to be forgotten. The gold is gone, the kings are dust, and the hanging gardens are a beautiful lie. But the name of Babylon still rings through the ages, a golden monument to the terrifying beauty of our own ambition. As the sun sets over the modern ruins of Al-Hilla, the long shadows of the past still seem to reach out, searching for a glory that will never return. The silence of the desert is heavy, a weight that only thousands of years of buried secrets can produce. We look at the dust of Babylon today and we are forced to see our own reflection in the grit and the stone. It is the original blueprint for every empire that has ever existed, a warning carved into the very earth that even the greatest heights lead eventually to the deepest falls. The gold has long since been melted down by conquerors, and the blue tiles of the Ishtar Gate have been scattered across the museums of a world the Babylonians could never have imagined. Yet, the ghost of the city remains more powerful than the physical stones ever were. It lives in the way we trade, the way we govern, and the way we still obsess over the accumulation of things that cannot be taken into the afterlife. We are still building towers of glass and steel, and we are still ignoring the quiet whispers of the river at our feet. The story of Babylon is a reminder that civilization is nothing more than a fragile skin stretched over a wild and unpredictable heart. It teaches us that wealth is not a shield, but a magnet for the very forces that seek to dismantle it. When the desert wind howls across the mounds of broken brick today, it doesn't sound like a funeral dirge. It sounds like a patient whisper, waiting for the next great city to rise and make the same beautiful, tragic mistakes. Even in the 20th century, men tried to resurrect this ghost, laying new bricks over the ancient ones in a desperate attempt to reclaim a power that had already moved on. But the earth of Mesopotamia rejected the new skin, leaving the modern replicas to crumble alongside the originals.
Babylon refuses to be rebuilt because its purpose was already served. It was the first to show us what happens when humanity decides it no longer needs the gods, and when we believe that our own names are enough to hold back the tide of time. We are all citizens of Babylon in some way, living in the shadows of the systems they invented and the greed they perfected. The richest city in history didn't just leave behind ruins. It left behind a DNA of ambition that flows through every modern metropolis. The forbidden truth is that the fall of Babylon never truly ended. It is a slow, agonizing process that continues every time a society puts its faith in gold over people, and in walls over the wisdom of the past. As the light fades from the horizon, we are left with a single chilling question that echoes through the empty streets of the once great capital. If the richest city in the history of the world could be turned into a memory, what makes us think our own world is any more permanent? The river still flows, the sand still shifts, and the ghosts of the kings still wait for the next empire to walk through the gate. History is not a straight line, but a circle that always leads back to the dust. If the secrets of the ancient world and the hidden truths of our past resonate with you, Don't let this story be buried once again. Your journey into the forbidden chapters of history has only just begun. Subscribe and join us as we continue to unearth the mysteries that the world tried to forget. Leave a comment below with the name of the ancient wonder you believe holds the most dangerous secret. The past is never truly dead, it is only waiting for someone to listen. Until next time, keep your eyes on the horizon and your mind open to the truths that lie beneath the surface.